Hello fellow learners, and welcome. My name is Connor, and I'll be your math tutor for today's video. Our question today asks, the cost in thousands of dollars for a company to produce X thousands of its product is given by the function C of X equals 10x plus 30. The revenue from the sales of the product is given by the function R of X equals negative 5x squared plus 150x. Notice that C of X and R of X highlighted, as these are your two main functions. So, where to begin? Let's start with question A. Question A asks, write the function that represents the company's profit on the sales of X thousands of its product. So, our profit function is going to be represented by P of X. So how do we find this? Don't worry, it's not as hard as it seems. Remember that C of X and R of X equation? Well, they're going to help us find P of X. P of X, or profit, is equal to the revenue minus the costs of a company. So our profit function is going to be Rx minus Cx. Now that you know P of X is equal to R of X minus C of X, you're going to sub in the equations to give you P of X equals negative 5x squared plus 150x minus 10x plus 30. This gives you negative 5x squared plus 140x minus 30. And congratulations, that's the profit function, which is equal to P of X equals negative 5x squared plus 140x minus 30. Next, let's take a look at question B. Question 3b asks, graph the cost, revenue, and profit functions on the same coordinate grid, where the domain is 0 is greater or equal to x and less than or equal to 40. For our graph, we're going to label the y-axis cost, where it's in thousands, and the x-axis in products, which is also in thousands, and the x-axis is between 0 and 40, which is the domain. First, let's start with our C of x graph, which is linear. So, starting, we're going to sub in 0 as x for the C of x graph. This gives you C of 0 is equal to 10, 0 plus 30. This is equal to 30. So now you know that you have 1 point on 0 and 30. Our next point we're going to use is 40. So our graph will look like C of 40 equals 10 times 40 plus 30. This gives you 430. So now we know our second point is 40 and 430. So, now we have our 2 points, 0 and 30, and 40 and 430. Now we're going to plot these on our graph. As you can see, I've plotted the 2 points in green on our graph. Now all you're going to do is draw a straight line in between the two using a ruler. Great! Now that we've graphed our very first function, let's move on to something a little more difficult. Next, let's use our R of X graph, which is a quadratic function. Now if you remember, quadratic equations are ax squared plus bx plus c. Next, we're going to factor our R of X equation. It's going to equal negative 5x bracket x minus 30. This gives you the roots of 0 and 30, so we now know we have two x-intercepts of 0 and 0 and 30 and 0. Next up, we're going to try and find the vertex. We're going to use a new equation, and this is x equals negative b over 2a. So we're going to sub in our b value and a value into the equation. So you get x equals negative 150 over 2 times negative 5. This gives you an x value of 15. This is also known as your axis of symmetry. We're now going to use the x equals 15 and sub it back into the equation. This is to find your y value of the vertex. So we're going to have r of 15 equals negative 5 15 squared plus 150 times 15. This gives you a y value of 1,125. Congratulations, you found the vertex. It's 15 and 1,125. This is your third point. To find our fourth point, we're going to use x equals 4. This is just any random point on the graph. What we're going to do is sub in x equals 4 anywhere we see x in the equation. So we're going to have r of 4 is equal to negative 5 times 4 squared plus 150 times 4. This gives you r of 4 equals 520. So you now know you have a point on 4 and 520. Now we're going to use another random point, x equals 24. It's the same steps as last time, so you're going to end up with r of 24 equals 720. This gives you the point of 24 and 720. Great, now we know all our points on the graph. We're going to use 5 points when we're graphing for as best accuracy as we can. Using the points we have before, let's plot them on the graph. It'll look something like this. Next, you're going to fill in the dots. And you're going to get a quadratic equation that looks like the one that's colored in as blue. And congratulations, you've graphed your r of x function. Lastly, we're going to graph our profit function. It's the same steps as before. This time though, it's a little more difficult to find our x-intercepts. We're going to have to use the quadratic equation, which, if you remember, is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So go ahead and sub the values in. You're going to get an equation that looks like x equals negative 140 plus or minus the square root of 19,000 divided by negative 10. Now when you minus the equation, you're going to get x equals 27.78, and when you add the equation, you're going to get x equals 0.2159. These are both your x-intercepts. Now we're going to use the same equation, x equals negative b over 2a, to find the value of the vertex. This gives you an x value of 14, otherwise known as the axis of symmetry. Now you're going to take that x equals 14 value and sub it back into the equation to find the y value of the vertex. This gives you 950. So you know your vertex is 14 and 950. Lastly, we're going to find our last 2 points. We're going to sub in x equals 24. So p of 24 is equal to 450. This gives you the point of 24 and 450. Then you use x of 4. So when you sub it into your equation, you get p of 4 is equal to 450. So it's 4 and 450. These points are symmetrical of each other. So now, let's plot our points. Go ahead and plot them, and I'm going to show you what the final graph will look like. These are our 5 final points. Here is what the graph should look like. The graph in orange is the profit function of the graph. The graph in blue is the revenue function of the graph. And the linear graph in green is the cost function. Wasn't that last question fun? Well, now here's the last and final question. Question C. Question C asks, what is the company's profit on the sale of 7,500 of its product? To start, we're going to continue using the profit function. Because we know x is in the thousands, you take the total number of product, which is 7,500, and divide it by 1,000 to find x. This gives you 7.5. Now you sub 7.5 back into the profit equation. This gives you 738.75. Now, because x is in the thousands, you must multiply by 1,000 to find the total profit. This gives you the company's profit, which is $738,750. That's a lot of profit. Did you know you can use this type of question in multiple different types of careers? One such career where we would use this type of question is accounting, in which you would use it in profit centers to help figure out how you'd maximize your profits for the company by keeping costs at a low. Thanks for watching. I hope you had an advanced fun time, just like me. I hope to see you next time when we take on calculus.